With the release of Alien Earth on Disney+, I wanted to dive into the complete Alien canon timeline, covering every film, TV series, game, and novel in the story year order. We'll show how each story connects, and we'll clarify one of the biggest questions of all. Where do the facehuggers and xenomorphs actually come from? And how does one android's quest for perfection lead directly to the nightmare we first saw back in 1979's Alien? So let's start at the beginning. Prometheus. Story year 2089 to 2093. Released in 2012 by director Ridley Scott, Prometheus follows archaeologist Elizabeth Shaw, played by Noomi Rapace, and Charlie Holloway, played by Logan Marshall Green, as they discover ancient star maps leading humanity to a distant moon, also known as LV-223. They're joined by the android David 8, played by Michael Fassbender, under the command of Meredith Vickers, portrayed by Charlize Theron. What they find isn't paradise, but ruins of an alien species known as the Engineers, the supposed creators of humanity. The ship they explore contains vials of black liquid, a mutagenic bioweapon that warps DNA. David, acting under secret Weyland Company orders, secretly experiments with Holloway and Shaw, exposing Holloway to the black goo and ultimately infecting him fatally. Shaw becomes pregnant with a trilobite, which attacks an engineer, producing the Deacon, a proto-xenomorph. This event plants the seeds of David's obsession, the creation of a parasitic organism capable of incubating in a host. By the end, Shaw departs with David's help, leaving the engineer's secrets behind, but setting the stage for what comes next. The film ends with Shaw and David as the only survivors. Shaw insists they must go to the engineer homeworld to find answers, while David has his own agenda. Now we move to Alien Covenant. Released in 2017 by director Ridley Scott, the film takes place in 2104. The story picks up 10 years later with a new crew of a colony ship named Covenant. Catherine Waterston stars as Daniels, with Billy Crudup as Captain Oram, and Danny McBride as Tennessee. The colony ship Covenant is originally en route for Argus 6, a habitable planet where 2,000 colonists and embryos are meant to start a new life. But partway through the journey, a neutrino burst damages the ship, killing some colonists and forcing the crew to make repairs. While fixing things, they intercept a mysterious human transmission. A woman singing John Denver's "Take Me Home Country Roads," coming from a nearby planet. The Covenant diverts to the seemingly habitable world named Planet 4, only to discover David, still alive, but changed. Fassbender plays both David and Walter, his newer, obedient counterpart. And what happened to Shaw? Officially, David used her body in grotesque experiments. In his own words, she sacrificed herself for his work. The short film, named Advent, confirms that David dissected Shaw and used her tissue in his research, blending human and engineered DNA with the mutagenic black goo. Here's the key point to this. David designed the entire egg-to-facehugger to chestburster cycle. He experimented on local fauna, including small flying creatures and insects, then weaponized them with his pathogen to produce embryo delivery systems. By combining the mutagen with the genetic material from Shaw and engineer organisms, he refined a parasitic organism that could incubate efficiently inside a human host. The result? The classic ovomorph egg containing the facehugger, exactly what we see in 1979's Alien. David perfected the design, an egg with a waiting parasite that launches, implants an embryo, and ensures survival through a host. He proudly calls this "my success," confirming that the xenomorph we know begins with him. By the film's climax, David's first true prototypical xenomorphs hatch, fully realizing his vision. At the end, David boards the Covenant under the guise of Walter and smuggles facehugger embryos into storage, setting the stage for the nightmare that will later unfold on LV-426. Moving forward, we get to Alien Earth, released in 2025 by Noah Hawley. Set 2 years before Alien 1979, Alien Earth moves the franchise's terror from deep space to humanity's home world. The series explores how corporate greed and scientific overreach bring the xenomorph threat to Earth, long before the Nostromo's fateful mission. Sydney Chandler stars as Wendy, a young woman whose consciousness is transferred into a synthetic body as part of an experimental hybridization project. Timothy Olyphant portrays Kirsch, a synthetic scientist and mentor guiding Wendy and the other Lost Boys, hybrid subjects created under the secretive Prodigy Corporation, led by the ambitious CEO, Boy Cavalier, played by Samuel Blinken. When the Weyland-Yutani freighter Mingok crashes on Earth carrying alien specimens, believed to be the descendants of David's earlier experiments seen in Alien Covenant, corporate and governmental forces scramble to contain the outbreak. Alien Earth serves as a critical bridge between the prequels and the original film, showing how the legacy of David's genetic tampering and the black pathogen continue to shape Weyland-Yutani's pursuit of bioweapons. It establishes the groundwork for the company's future missions into deep space, revealing that the obsession with controlling the Xenomorph began long before the Nostromo crew ever encountered it on LV-426. Although it doesn't directly feature Ellen Ripley or other familiar film characters, Alien Earth contextualizes the world she inherits, a civilization already corrupted by the pursuit of power, blurring the lines between human and synthetic. In doing so, it closes the loop on the prequel era and sets the stage for the horrors to come. And now, the one that started it all. Alien, released in 1979, directed by Ridley Scott, takes place in 2122. The commercial towing ship Nostromo, crewed by Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, Dallas, played by Tom Skerritt, Kane, played by John Hurt, Parker, played by Yaphet Kotto, Lambert, played by Veronica Cartwright, and Ash, played by the late Ian Holm, respond to a distress signal on a small moon named LV-426. There, Kane discovers David's perfected creation, an egg, and out leaps the first facehugger we ever see on screen. This is David's work in action. The parasite attaches, implants an embryo, and later, in one of cinema's most iconic scenes, bursts out of Kane's chest. This encounter is the first direct demonstration of David's perfective xenomorph in action, and what follows is survival horror at its purest, as Ripley and the crew are hunted by a fully grown xenomorph. The film ends with Ripley escaping, unknowingly setting her on a path that will define her life and cement the alien's threat to humanity. Now we move to Alien Romulus. Released in 2024 and directed by Fede Alvarez, the story takes place just 3 years after Ripley's first encounter in the year 2125. Alien Romulus follows a group of 6 colonists from Jackson's star who stumble across a decommissioned Weyland-Yutani space station. The station, divided into 2 modules named Romulus and Remus, was once used for secret corporate experiments, including studies of recovered xenomorph specimens and the black pathogen research, tying directly back to the events of the Prometheus and Covenant films. Kaylee Spinney stars as Rain Carradine, the determined protagonist, and David Johnson plays her synthetic brother Andy. Unaware of the horrors awaiting aboard, the colonists aim to secure cryogenic sleep chambers to escape to Yavega 3, a distant safe colony. However, the station still houses dangerous alien specimens, and the black pathogen resurfaces, demonstrating how David's early creations and experiments are spreading beyond LV-426. The film bridges the corporate experiments of the early 2100s, showing how Weyland-Yutani's obsession with xenomorphs and bioweapons continues to threaten humanity across the galaxy. And now we have our first video game title in the timeline, Alien Isolation. Released in 2014 and developed by Creative Assembly, takes place in 2137. 15 years after the Nostromo incident, Amanda Ripley, voiced by Andrea Deck, the daughter of Ellen Ripley, investigates the disappearance of her mother's flight recorder. Her search leads her to the Sevastopol Station, an isolated space station orbiting the planet KG-348. This is where she discovers that Weyland-Yutani has been conducting ongoing secret experiments involving xenomorph specimens. On board, Amanda encounters a xenomorph that stalks the station, demonstrating the terrifying efficiency and adaptability of David's creations from the prequels. Isolation emphasizes the human cost of corporate obsession, showing that Weyland-Yutani's relentless pursuit of bioweapons continues to endanger innocent lives. The story builds Amanda Ripley's character arc, while bridging the gap between the prequels and the original Alien film, highlighting that David's experiments and the black pathogen continue to shape the galaxy's unfolding xenomorph nightmare. And finally, we get to Aliens, the coolest action film of all time. Story year 2179, released in 1986 by director James Cameron. The story takes place 57 years after the Nostromo incident. Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, is found drifting in space and brought out of stasis. She learns that LV-426, the planet where the Nostromo first encountered the xenomorph, has now been colonized by humans. Ripley is debriefed by corporate and medical personnel and is informed that her daughter, Amanda Ripley, has died. In the director's cut of the film, Carter Burke, played by Paul Reiser, shows her a photograph and states, "She died of cancer, Mrs. Ripley. She was 66. While the official line is that Amanda succumbed to cancer, it's widely considered likely that she perished on their Sevastopol station during the Xenomorph outbreak in Alien Isolation. However, given Weyland-Yutani's history of secrecy and cover-ups, it's possible the company obscured the true circumstances of her death. This devastating news heightens the stakes for Ripley, as she reluctantly joins the team of Colonial Marines, including Hicks, played by Michael Biehn, Newt, played by Carrie Henn, Hudson, played by Bill Paxton, and the synth, known as Bishop, played by Lance Henriksen, to investigate LV-246's colony. However, Burke's corporate agenda threatens to exploit the aliens for bioweapon development. Upon arriving, the group discovers a thriving xenomorph hive, ruled by a terrifying queen. This confirms that David's early experiments in the species evolution have created a fully organized, reproductive hierarchy. The aliens are no longer isolated monsters, they are an adaptable species capable of full-scale infestation, expanding the threat far beyond a single crew or ship. Aliens bridges the early experiences on Planet 4 and LV-426 with the ongoing human struggle against the species, demonstrating that the xenomorph threat has grown into a fully organized deadly force across human colonies. And now we come to Aliens Colonial Marines, another video game entry. Story year 2179, released in 2013 following the destruction of Hadley's Hope and the events of Aliens and Alien 3, the story of Aliens Colonial Marines returns us to LV-426. A squad of Marines is sent to investigate the fate of the Sulaco, the ship from the 1986 Alien film, and the colony they were investigating. What they discover is that the nightmare is far from over. Remnants of Weyland-Yutani's experiments, scattered survivors, and new xenomorph threats remain, even after the nuclear blast that supposedly destroyed the colony had gone off. The game attempted to bridge the gap left in the films, showing just how determined Weyland-Yutani was to reclaim alien specimens. However, Colonial Marines is one of the most controversial entries in the franchise. While marketed as a canon release, its contradictions with the films, such as Hadley Hope being way too intact, have led many fans and later lore to treat it as semi-canon at best. It highlights the same core truth though. The company's obsession with the xenomorph will stop at nothing, even in the irradiated ruins of LV-426. Now we come to Alien 3, story year 2179 to 2180, released in 1992 by director David Fincher. Following the catastrophic events of Aliens, Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, crash lands on Fiorina 161, or Fury 161, a remote maximum security prison colony. The crash kills Hicks, Michael Biehn, and Newt, Carrie Henn, leaving Ripley as the sole human survivor. She quickly discovers that she carries a queen embryo inside her, a legacy of the hive she destroyed on LV-426. The colony is populated by male prisoners and a small number of religiously inclined staff, creating a tense environment as a xenomorph that was stowed on the Sulaco begins to stalk the facility. Charles S. Dutton stars as Dylan, and Charles Dance as Clemens. Lance Henriksen reprises his role as Bishop, both as the damaged synth from Aliens and a human executive the synth is modelled on, symbolising the lingering corporate control of Weyland-Yutani. As the xenomorph begins to reproduce, this time through animal hosts, the prisoners and Ripley are forced into a deadly struggle for survival. Meanwhile, Weyland-Yutani's obsession continues. The company attempts to retrieve the alien embryo from Ripley, demonstrating the enduring corporate greed seen in Aliens and other titles. Ripley ultimately sacrifices herself by leaping into a furnace, ensuring the death of the queen embryo and temporarily halting Weyland-Yutani's plans. This act ties back to her personal loss, the death of Hicks, Newt, and the knowledge of her daughter Amanda's death, and underscores her ongoing fight against the consequences of David's creations and the xenomorph threat. How does this connect to the earlier films? A question many have asked since the release of Alien 3. Ripley's experience on Fury 161 is a direct continuation of her battles from Alien and Aliens, showing the personal cost of the xenomorphs and Weyland-Yutani's obsession. The queen embryo inside Ripley is the evolutionary result of the hive hierarchy first seen in Aliens, which in turn originated from David's experiments on Planet 4 from Alien Covenant. Bishop's dual appearance, both android and human-inspired executive, reinforces the series' reoccurring themes of synthetic interference and corporate control, first hinted at in Alien and expanded in Aliens and the prequels. Fury 161 becomes a contained setting where the Xenomorph continues its life cycle, demonstrating that the aliens are no longer limited to isolated incidents but can survive and evolve in many different environments. Alien 3 thus bridges Ripley's personal arc from lone survivor to sacrificial hero while cementing the Xenomorph's evolution and the ongoing threat of Weyland-Yutani's exploitation of David's creations. We now have a look at some of the out there sort of stories during the Alien timeline. So firstly I want to take a look at the Alien RPG storyline. This takes place between 2180 and 2200. After the events of Alien 3, the Xenomorph threat continues to spread across the human colonies and corporate facilities, largely due to Weyland-Yutani's relentless pursuit of bioweapons research and the enduring legacy of David's early experiments on Planet 4. The Free League Alien RPG tabletop role-playing game is set during the 2180s to 2200 and allows players to create characters such as colonists, marines, or scientists navigating scenarios involving xenomorphs, corporate conspiracies, and survival in isolated colonies or stations. These campaigns explore outbreaks, containment failures, and military interventions, showing the ongoing consequences of humanity's meddling with the perfected parasitic species. There are also several novels that take place over the same time period. These also explore the pattern of corporate greed and evolution of the xenomorphs. First up we have Alien, The Cold Forge, story year 2185, released in 2018 by author Alex White. The Cold Forge follows investigator Dorian Sudler as he uncovers secret Weyland-Yutani labs experimenting on xenomorphs. The story emphasizes corporate horror and the human cost, showing how Weyland-Yutani continued to weaponize David's original experiments. Sudler navigates dangerous facilities where xenomorph specimens are studied, and the narrative reinforces the franchise's ongoing theme of greed, scientific hubris, and the persistent threat of the aliens. We then have Alien Prototype, story year 2186. Released in 2019 by author Tim Wagner, following shortly after The Cold Forge, Prototype explores the development of advanced synthetic units and their involvement in managing xenomorph outbreaks. The story ties into the continuing efforts of Weyland-Yutani to control and militarize the aliens, and expands on the US Colonial Marine Corps' operations across frontier colonies. The novel deepens the lore of the human-alien interaction, highlighting both the tactical challenges and moral compromises of working with the species. We then move to Alien Into Charybdis, story year 2187 to 2190, released in 2021 by author Alex White. Into Charybdis examines the political and societal fallout of xenomorph outbreaks across multiple colonies. The novel shows how Weyland-Yutani manipulates governments and depicts frontier politics and corporate malfeasance as humanity struggles to contain the species. By linking outbreak consequences to governance and corporate overreach, the novel bridges the gap between the aftermath of Aliens and the later RPG tabletop game and the video games, including Dark Descent and Fireteam Elite. We then see the release of several novels and an updated RPG. Alien Colony War by David Barnett, Alien Inferno's Fall by Philippa Ballantyne, Alien Enemy of My Enemy by Mary Sangiovanni, and the RPG Building Better Worlds. These all take place in the years 2185 to 2202, and they were all released within 1 year of each other over 2022 and 2023. The novels Alien Colony War, Infernal's Fall, Enemy of My Enemy, and the RPG Building Better Worlds take place across the post-Aliens frontier, focusing on remote Weyland-Yutani facilities, human colonies, and orbital stations rather than revisiting familiar film planets like LV-426 or Fury 161. While the stories introduce mostly new characters, they frequently reference the ongoing influence of David's experiments and Weyland-Yutani's relentless genetic research, tying the events to the origins of the xenomorphs established in Prometheus and Covenant. These novels expand the universe by exploring outbreak responses, tactical engagements, and corporate cover-ups, and the political and industrial challenges of human expansion, bridging the narrative to the events portrayed in the tabletop RPG campaigns, as well as the tactical games Aliens Dark Descent, which takes place in 2198, and Aliens Fireteam Elite, which takes place in 2202. Although the main film characters do not appear, minor corporate personnel and AI models create indirect links to the prior films, making the series a critical part of understanding the evolving threat of the Xenomorphs in the broader canon. Now we come back to the video game entries. Aliens Dark Descent, story year 2198, which was released in 2023. Set in 2198, 2 decades after Alien 3, Aliens Dark Descent is a real-time tactical strategy game developed by Tinderloss Interactive and published by Focus Entertainment. Players command a squad of Colonial Marines responding to a catastrophic xenomorph outbreak on the remote mining moon called Lathe. The story begins when a mysterious infiltrator releases deadly xenomorphs aboard the shuttle Bentonville. The ensuing chaos leads to the activation of the Cerberus Protocol, a Weyland-Yutani planetary quarantine procedure which docks at Lathe's Pioneer Station, that results in the destruction of the Bentonville and another freighter, Balderin, with all hands lost. However, Deputy Administrator Mako Hayes survives and is rescued by Sergeant Jonas Harper and his squad of Colonial Marines. They embark on a mission to the crash-landed USS Otago, navigating through settlements, spaceports, and encountering the Darwin-era cult, which reveres xenomorphs as a higher stage of evolution. The Marines uncover that Weyland-Yutani's director, Barbara Price, has been manipulating events, and the cult leader's Joseph Marlowe is conducting experiments involving telepathic communication with the xenomorphs. The story culminates in a confrontation beneath an ancient alien city, where the Marines face a gargantuan xenomorph and a nuclear sterilization attempt by Cerberus. Aliens Dark Descent emphasizes tactical combat, squad management, and the persistent threat of the xenomorphs, reflecting the ongoing dangers introduced in the earlier films. It explores themes of corporate malfeasance, genetic experimentation, and the human cost of unchecked ambition. Continuing the narrative established in Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3, the game's setting on Lathe, a harsh mining planet, and the presence of Weyland-Yutani's Cerberus Protocol ties directly into the franchise's exploration of corporate control. We now come to another video game entry, Aliens Fireteam Elite, story year 2202, released in 2021. Set in 2202, Aliens Fireteam Elite takes place between the events of Aliens 3 and Aliens Resurrection. Continuing the story after the catastrophic outbreaks on LV-426 and Fury 161, players assume the roles of Colonial Marines responding to multiple xenomorph infestations across the human colonies. With a strong emphasis on squad-based tactical combat, the narrative focuses on the USS Endeavour, which is sent to investigate the Katanga refinery station orbiting LV-895. Upon arrival, the team finds that the station is overrun by xenomorphs and uncovers Weyland-Yutani's ongoing experimentation with the pathogen, a mutagenic substance connected to the species' continued evolution. The Marines also encounter remnants of engineer technology and a rogue Weyland-Yutani AI, which is attempting to launch an engineer starship containing dangerous cargo. The mission culminates with the Marines working to prevent the starship from spreading the pathogen further into human space. While the gameplay is action-orientated, the story expands the canon by illustrating that xenomorph outbreaks are not isolated events, but a galactic-scale problem. Fueled by corporate greed and experimentation, the game ties back to earlier films by showing the continued consequences of David's creations and Weyland-Yutani's relentless pursuit of alien bioweapons, emphasizing that humanity remains locked in an ongoing struggle against these deadly creatures. And now we come back to the films. Alien Resurrection, story year 2381, released in 1997 and directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet. Jumping ahead over 200 years after Ripley's sacrifice on Fury 161, we arrive at Alien Resurrection. Set in 2381, this story was written by Joss Whedon. The film introduces us to Ripley 8, a clone hybrid carrying both human and xenomorph DNA. Played once again by Sigourney Weaver, alongside her we meet Winona Ryder as Cal, an autonomous synthetic, as well as Ron Perlman, Sabra Hillard, and Brad Dourif. Aboard the military research vessel USM Auriga, Weyland-Yutani's corporate and military scientists have perfected cloning and xenomorph containment, with the goal of weaponizing the aliens. Ripley 8 discovers that she carries Queen DNA, leading to the emergence of a highly intelligent xenomorph hybrid, far deadlier than anything we've seen before. This chapter of the story shows just how far humanity is willing to go to reclaim the organism, and how that pursuit inevitably corrupts us. The film ties back to everything we've seen in the prequels and earlier films. The xenomorphs here descend from the life cycle David began experimenting on in Covenant, while Ripley herself embodies the direct fusion of human and xenomorph DNA, linking back to the sacrifice Ripley made in Alien 3. Corporate greed and military exploitation are at the heart of the narrative, reinforcing the franchise's reoccurring themes. Even centuries later, humanity's obsession with controlling the aliens leads to catastrophic consequences, reminding us that the shadows of Weyland-Yutani and the legacy of David's experiments continue to loom large across human space. I just wanted to add a bit at the end here around the non-canon timeline, around the film of Alien vs Predator and that franchise. So outside of the official canon, the Alien vs Predator films explore a very different version of events. Alien vs Predator, released in 2004, and Alien vs Predator Requiem, released in 2007, imagine a direct conflict between the aliens and the predators, naturally. Bringing these two species to Earth and entwining their histories with human involvement. These stories focus on action-driven encounters and the mythology of the predators using aliens as hunting prey, but they do not connect to the canonical timeline established by Prometheus, Covenant, or any of the future films. In this alternate universe, there is no David, no engineer backstory, and no continuity with the xenomorph life cycle seen in the canonical films. The human corporations are largely absent or incidental, and the narrative emphasizes spectacle over scientific or corporate themes, central to the main Alien timeline. While enjoyable as high-octane crossover stories, these films exist in their own parallel continuity, offering a what-if scenario rather than expanding the official story of Aliens, but they are cool to watch. Although Alien Predator Requiem, a bit questionable, but it's just fun. So, in conclusion, as we've seen, the Alien universe is far more than just horror on the Nostromo. From the ancient engineers and David's horrific experiments in Prometheus and Covenant, to the human greed and sacrifice of the original films, the story of the xenomorphs spans centuries, planets, and countless human and synthetic lives. The novels, tabletop RPGs, and video games extend the story even further, exploring the frontier colonies, Weyland-Yutani's relentless corporate schemes, and the ongoing evolution of these terrifying creatures. Whether it's tactical squad missions in Dark Descent, or cooperative firefights in Fireteam Elite, these stories demonstrate that the aliens are not isolated horrors, they are a galactic-scale threat, tied directly to the experiments of humans and the legacy of David. Even the non-canon crossovers like Alien vs Predator highlight just how powerful and fascinating these creatures have become in pop culture, even if they sit outside the official timeline. At its core, the Alien saga is about curiosity, ambition, and obsession, showing how humanity's desire to control life and profit from it can have a catastrophic consequence. From the first overmorph to the latest hybrid experiments, the story continues to evolve, leaving room for more tales, games, and explorations in this dark, thrilling universe. And so that brings us to the end of this video. I know it's been a while since I've posted anything, and thanks for sticking around. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the complete Alien timeline, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts on your favourite xenomorph moments in the comments below. Who knows what Disney will throw at us next, right?